Kal Kadosh, Boker or Masechet Bava Metzia Daf Gav Gimel Amud Aleph 23a1. We were speaking about the Rabbi goes according to his reasoning, right? Rabbi Mitaretz Tameh is with a siman because he's talking about the Krichot and Reshut Rabim. They belong to him Mishum de Midrasa because people they stamp upon it, and since they stamp upon it, Birshut Yachid Notelu Machriz. In the Reshut Yachid, you take it and you just announce it. Delo midrasa because people don't trample upon it, so therefore there's still a siman. And alumot ben b'reshut rabim ben b'reshut yachid, whether it's going to be in Reshut Rabim or Reshut Yachid, notelu machriz. Why? Because since they're so tall, people don't stamp upon it, and since they don't come and stamp it, so there's still going to be a siman. Because remember, according to Rabbi, everything had to do with the siman, and here you still have the siman that's going to be there. Rava Metaretz Tameh. Rava was the one that answered that everything was talui b'makom. If you remember that, even if you didn't have a siman, but the makom, so that was already going to be enough. What does it mean b'makom? Krichot b'reshut rabim arelu shelo. Krichot and reshut rabim, they belong to him. Why? The mishnashtafa, because they start rolling around, meaning because they're small, so it starts rolling, so it doesn't have the same place. But b'reshut yachid, you're obligated to come and to announce it. Why? Because since there's not as many people walking around, people are careful with it, and therefore they're not going to trample upon it, that it's going to start rolling from one place to another. So the makom is a siman. But alumot, which are the big tall stalks, whether it's a shut abim shut yachid, you're obligated to do it. Why? Because since they're very, very heavy, so they don't roll around in the wind. And therefore it is going to be a good siman, the makom, even in a reshut arabim. Okay, so this is where we're going to start today. This we already did yesterday. This is what we're starting today. Ta Shema. So we are going to be 2, 4, 6, 8 lines down. Ta Shema. We learned in a Mishnah. We're going to bring a proof. Yeah, to Shitat Rava, that a siman which is made to trample upon, it's still considered a siman. Kikarot shel nachtom arelu shelo. We said kikarot shel nachtom, which means of like a bakery. And therefore, since they all look alike, so obviously they belong to you, because there's no siman. Ha shel balabait. But if it does belong to a balabait, so then what happens? He comes and he says, chayav la'achriz, you're obligated to announce it. Shel balabait, my tama, what's the reasoning of the balabait that you have to announce it? Given the siman, but it has a siman, made the yadia, you already know. Rifta di inish inishu. Because the kikar of a person is the person, which means every single person bakes his bread in a certain way, and therefore you could find out the bread, meaning you could find out the person, right, who made this bread, who baked this bread.
So,
yeah?
So mashma everybody's dalit.
Velo shna birshut rabim, velo shna birshut yachid. So now, since we did not divide in the Mishnah, there's no difference where you found these kikarot. Whether it was you found in the Reshut Rabim or in the Reshut Yachid. No telu machriz. You're always going to come and you're going to announce it. Alma, so you see from here. Siman asui lidares. Have a siman. Here you have a siman which is going to be trampled upon, and it's still considered a siman. V'tufta de Rabba. And this is going to be a question against Rabba. Sam lecha Rabba. Rabba is going to tell you, he says, what are you talking about? You're calling this a siman which you're going to trample? It's bread. If bread is on the floor, nobody's going to trample it. Why? Because en mavirin al ochlim, which means you don't come and you just leave bread on the floor. You're going to pick it up. So it's not made lemidras. Meaning, if it has a siman that I look at this style of bread and I say, you know what, this style of bread, obviously it's not a nachtom because no bakery in the area sells this type of bread. So I know it's an individual. And then we could try to find out, okay, there's a siman that the way of the texture, the way that they make it, some people make round, some people make long, some people make, oval, some people, there's millions of different, not only just the shapes, but also in the texture and the way that it's made. So therefore, it's a balabait, meaning that it belongs to an individual. They are the ones that do it. Nobody's going to come and start trampling upon it. It's emavadin lo'ochel. You're not allowed to pass by on the food, and therefore we know obviously people are not going to be mityash because you have a good siman. So says the Gemara, v'hai kanochi. Says, what are you talking about? There's goyim, and the goyim, if they're not makpid on bizui ochlim, they'll come, and then what's going to happen is they'll trample upon the bread. They don't care. So answers the Gemara, Nochrim Chayshel Kshafim. He says, no, even Nochrim, they're not going to come and start trampling upon food because they're going to suspect witchcraft, which means that sometimes they come and they put witchcraft in the food, and therefore when they're going to come and it's not going to, even if they're going to come and start, trampling upon it, it's going to affect them. So they don't trample upon food on the path. So ask the Gemara, okay, fine. You answered up the Goyim. Ve'ayika bema uklavim. You have dogs, right? You have animals. You think they know what's witchcraft, not witchcraft. You think they come, they see food, right? Either they're going to eat it or they're going to trample upon it, but they don't care. And so the Gemara, be'atra de lo shchiche bema uklavim. There's no animals or dogs. Yeah, and therefore, since there's no animals and dogs, we're not going to suspect that these are kikarot, which are going to be made to be trampled upon. So says the Gemara, one second, before even we continue or not, Leima Ketanai, why don't we just say that this machloket between Rabba and Rava, right, is actually a machloket Tanaim in our Mishnah. Why? Listen to this. Rabbi Yehuda comes and he says, Kol davar sheyesh bo shinui hayav leachriz. Anything which has a shinui, so therefore you're obligated to come and to announce it. Keitzad, what does that mean exactly? Matzah igul u'tocho cheres. You found an igul, but inside of it, this is a igul shel dvela, if you remember. This was the cake of the figs, the dried figs. But inside of it, there's a piece of pottery. Or a kikar, pottery, right? Or there's a kikar, and you found money inside of it. Yeah, mikal, so it's mashma. The Tanakama savar, Tanakama of the Mishnah holds, right? Because this was Rabbi Yehuda Omer. So it's mashma that according to Tanakama, Harelu shelo, it belongs to you, even though you do have the pottery inside of it. So Savrua, so the Gemara is going to say, we thought, which means we assumed, Dechule Alma, that according to everybody, whether Tanakama or according to Rabbi Yehuda, Siman Abba Me'elav, Havi Siman. If there's a Siman, right, which sometimes it actually does happen on its own, which means without Kavanah, it's still going to be considered a Siman. Okay, because we're going to say, right, that maybe that it didn't fall by itself, meaning that they put it there as a Siman, purposely. And also we assumed the ma'avirin ala ochlin. Yeah, everyone agrees that they do pass by in the food and you don't have to come and pick it up from the ground. So it comes out that everybody agrees that there's a siman in this cake and that this siman is asui limidras. Yeah? So says the Gemara, so now let's try to make it the machloket of the Tanaim. My love, is it not then that siman asui lidres kamipalgez the machloket, right, between Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda? More savar, Tanakama holds that lo avi siman, it's not considered a siman. Right? Why? Because it's limidras, which means people could trample upon it. Umor savar, and Rabbi Yehuda holds that it is considered a siman. Meaning, we wanted to make the machloket between Rabba and Rava the same machloket between Rabbi Yehuda and Tanakama. That according to Tanakama, it's not considered a siman because people trample upon it. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, it is. And therefore, that's a machloket between Rabba and Rava. Okay, that's what we wanted to say. So the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Zvid Mishmed Rava, says Rav Zvid in the name of Rava, yeah, and he comes and he says like this. He says, Isal Kadaitach, the Kasavar Tanakama Simana Asui Lidares, Lo Avi Siman. If you're going to tell me now that a siman which is made from Lidares is not considered a siman, Em Avidina Lo Ochlin, and we're going to be mavirim on the ochlin. Kikarot shel balabait b'reshut rabim may machris. So therefore, in kikarot of balabait in the reshut rabim. So then, why are you going to mention it then? If you're going to tell me mavirim al ochlin, it comes out that the siman is going to get destroyed. Meaning, even if you're going to tell me that my wife makes a certain type of bread, yeah, and therefore you will be able to find out whose bread it is, but if they trample upon it, you're not going to find out afterwards. It's very difficult to find out because the siman that we had is already gone. So therefore, if that siman is going to be gone, why do you have to mention it why do you have to actually announce it? It doesn't make sense if it's going to be trampled upon. So he comes and he answers like this. Ela amar Rav Zvid mishmed Rava. But rather Rav Zvid comes and he says the name of Rava. Dechule alma savri siman asuli deres havi siman. According to everybody. Right? Really behemet, a siman which you're going to trample is still considered a siman. Just like Rava. And mavdim ala ochlim. People do come and they pass by on the food. So what's the machloket then? Hacha besiman abba me'elav kamipageh. Here the machloket is a siman that might come on its own. Is that considered a siman or not? Tanakama savar siman ba me'elav lo avi siman, that it's not considered a siman. And Rabbi Yehuda holds that it is considered a siman, which means we're trying to say that really be'emet, that Mishnah has nothing really to do with us, because that Mishnah is only arguing with one fact. And the fact that we're arguing over there is, do I say that maybe it just happened to be there? Which means I have a piece of shard, right, a piece of pottery inside of this igul dvela. Do I say, listen, it could have just fell in, right? Or do I say, no, be'emet, that this is actually there, right, that was put there bechavana? So therefore, that's what we're saying. That's a machlok between Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda, okay? And Rabba Amar Lecha, and Rabba is going to tell you, Techule Alma, that according to everybody, Simane Asui Lemidras Lo Avi Siman. It's not going to become a Siman. And Lo Mavin Memachul, which means each one, Rabba and Rava, is going to explain to you the Mishnah according to their position. Meaning, if I come and I hold that Em Avinim Ochlim, that's how I'm going to explain the Mishnah. If I hold the Mavinim Ochlim, that's how I'm going to explain the Mishnah. If I hold that it's going to be Asuli Midrash, meaning it all depends upon, right, my Shita. So Rabba is the one that he comes and he says that Em Avinim Ochlim. Rabba is the one that he comes and he says Siman Asuli, the rest is not considered a Siman. So that's how he's learning the Mishnah. So what is a machloket in the Mishnah then between Rabbi Yehuda and Tanakama? Hechal b'siman haba me'elav kamipalgeh, Tanakama savar lo v'siman Rabbi Yehuda savar have siman, which means we answered up that if the machloket between Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda was, right, the siman haba me'elav, which means a siman that comes on its own, is that considered a siman or not? So therefore, each one explains the Mishnah according to them. So Rabbah says that the Mishnah is talking about that everybody agrees, Em Avenim Ela Ochel, and Siman Asul Midras is not considered a siman. And according to Rava with an Aleph, right, we do Mavinim Ela Ochel, and Siman Asul Midras is considered a siman. Okay, that is the shita of Rabbah and Rava to make sure that it's not going to be a machloket, right, in the Mishnah. Okay, fine. Ikadamne. Some people say. Now remember, right? Whenever you have an ikadamne, it means that they're going to try to flip it. There's another version. So some people say savrua. We thought techule alma, that according to everybody, siman ba me'elav havi siman, that it is considered a siman if it's a siman which comes on its own. The siman asuli dares lo havi siman, and siman which is made to trample is not considered a siman. My love, are we not dealing with then? Right, be mavinim ala ochlim kabim palgeh, that the entire machloket is to do with mavinim ala ochlim or not. Meaning, one more time, there are three. What's the word? There are 3 points of discussion which we're trying to find out is a machloket or not. Number 1, siman haba me'elav, which means sometimes it could just happen that a piece of pottery fell into the ugat vela. So is that considered a siman or not? Right? Or that sometimes it could happen that there's money inside of a piece of bread. Right? So that's a siman haba me'elav. Siman that comes on its own. That means it could happen, right? A mistake could happen and you could find the level. Is that considered a siman or not? That's one point of the machloket. Another point of machloket, something which is made the midras, which means that if people are going to come and they're going to trample upon something, right? Is that considered a siman or not? Because since people can trample upon it, is it considered a siman or not? Because once you trample upon it, you lost the siman. Number 3, is there such a concept of mavinim ala ochlim or not? That people are going to come and pass by the food or not? So therefore, at the beginning, we wanted to say that the machloket between Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanakama was in the machloket of siman haba me'elav. But the other 2 factors were 100%, either a yes or a no. According to Rabba, it was en mavinim ala ochlim, and it's not a siman. And according to Rava, yes, mavinim ala ochlim, and it is considered a siman. Now we're trying to flip it. And we're trying to say, really, the machloket between Rabbi Yehuda and Tanakama was siman haba me'elav. But to do with whether it's a siman or not, and to do with the machloket that siman asuli dares is a siman or not, mavinim ala ochlim or not, he comes and he says that's the machloket between Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanakama holds mavinim ala ochlim, and Rabbi Yehuda holds mavinim ala ochlim. So Amar Razvid Mishmed Rava, says Razvid in the name of Rava. Isal kadaita. If you're going to tell me now, Savar Tanakama, that Tanakama holds siman asuli dares lo siman, it's not considered a siman. And mavinim ala ochlim, right? Kikarot shel balabait b'reshut rabim, my machri. So why, when you have kikarot of the balabait in the reshut rabim, why do you mention it? This is a siman which is asui lidares, and it's not considered a siman. Meaning, you told me that the only machloke between Rabbi Yehuda and Tanakama was to do with ma'avirim al ochlim. But to do with the simana asui lidares, it's not a siman. So then why do you have to mention then kikarot of balabait? Yeah? If ma'avirim al ochlim, but that's a shitav Tanakama, so why do you have to mention kikarot shel balabait b'rshut rabim? It's not a siman. Because people are going to trample upon it. Yeah? Ela amar Rav Zvid, Mishmed Rava, but rather Rav Zvid says in the name of Rava. Techuli alma, according to everybody, whether Tanakama or Rabbi Yehuda, Sabri they hold, Siman asuli dares, Havi Siman. Siman which is going to be made to trample upon is considered a Siman, and Mavidim ala ochlim. And we are going to be Mavidim ala ochlim. Ve'hacha, and over here, Besiman abba me'elav kami palgez. It's a Siman which is coming on its own, is a machloka between them. Tanakama Savar, the Tanakama holds Siman abba me'elav is not considered a Siman. And Rabbi Yehuda comes and he says that it is a siman. So we went back to the original answer. That it comes on its own, that it could fall into it, like a piece of pottery or money in the bread. That was siman abba me'elav. So he comes, yes. So he comes and he says that we're going back to the original answer that we mentioned at the beginning, which was that the machlok between Rabbi Yehuda and Tanakama was siman abba me'elav, but really be'emet, right? He's coming and saying everybody agrees that it is considered a siman, but that's according to Rava. According to Shtat Rabba, he's going to tell you, no, everybody agrees that Siman Abba Me'elav is not, as Siman Asui L'Dares is not considered a Siman. And he holds Em Avirim Ala Ochlim. And here we're talking about Siman Abba Me'elav, that's a machlok between them, between Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rav Zvid Mishme de Rava. Says Rav Zvid in the name of Rava. Klala Daveta. We're talking about the Klal by an Avedah. Kevan de Amar Vaila lechesron kis. Once a person says kapara for the money that he lost, miyash lemine, it's already yush. That means if you heard that the guy went and he said kapara, that's it. It's already what? It's already considered that he did yush. The Amar Zvid mishme de Rava, and says Zvid the name of Rava. Hilchata, what is halacha? Krichot b'reshut rabim. If you find krichot in the reshut rabim, right? So therefore, harelu shelo, they belong to you. Which means that there's no difference whether they were found, whether the guy actually dropped it or he placed it there. Because in the Reshut Rabim, you cannot have such a siman. And therefore, in the Reshut Rabim, they belong to you. Finders, keepers, losers, weepers. Reshut Yachid, in the Reshut Yachid, iderech nefila, if it was that it fell, they belong to you. But if you placed it there, meaning that you could tell that a person placed it there, not just stam that it fell, no telem achriz, you have to announce it. V'zeh v'zeh, and these halachot is b'davar shem bo siman. But if there is a siman, lo shna, there's no difference whether it's going to be reshut yibim, reshut yachid, right, or derech nefila, derech hanacha. You always have to be machriz because there is a siman, which means that we're going like Rava with an aleph. That basically, that even if it's going to be a siman, which is a suili deres, it's still considered a siman, and that's how they're saying that. That is the halacha, right? How we are paskening. Okay, fine. Kav Gimel Amud Bet. Okay, 23b, the top. Okay, machrozot shel dagim. So we said we're talking about now machrozot shel dagim. Ask the Gemara, 1 second. We're talking about right now, right, these traps of the fish, right? So they belong to the person that finds it. The Gemara asks, Amai, why? They have a kesher, right? Siman, the kesher that the person made should already be the siman, which means every single person makes a knot a little bit differently. And therefore, the kesher that's actually made should already be a siman that it's your traps. And therefore, the food and everything, they belong to you. Yeah? So, answers the Gemara, Bekitra de Tzaida. What does it mean, Bekitra de Tzaida? We're talking about a kesher which is by the how do you call it? The fisherman. That everybody does the same way, which means, right, if it's going to be stama kesher, that's one thing. But here, when they're making these knots, they have to make it in a certain fashion. And therefore, since they all do it the same way, it's not a siman. So ask the Gemara, okay, fine. Why isn't the siman how many fish are in it? Meaning you found the net of the fish. Let's say there's 7 fish. The amount should already be enough. That should be a siman. So answers the Gemara, b'minyana de shavin. Right, we're talking about that the minyan of the fish in the machrozot was shaveh, which means that they always put the same amount in one net. I guess that they used to sell it that way. So, for example, like they used to come and they used to, let's say, catch whatever it is. So they used to put in every single bag. It was like, like when you buy a bag of onions, right? That they have a certain amount, right? So therefore, the exact same thing. They had an amount of fish in every single bag. So therefore, the number was not a siman. Everybody puts that number, right? Why? Because when you're going to come and you're going to sell it, right? That's what you're coming and you are doing. Okay? Fine. So says the Gemara, Bava Metzia Daf, they come and they ask from Rav Sheshat, Minyan, havi siman or lo havi siman? Okay? Fine. Is a minyan, is the amount, the numbers, is that considered a siman or not? Amar lu Rav Sheshat told him, Tenitua, we already learned it. Matzah kli chesef o kli nechoshet. Kasteron shel avar o chol kli matichot. Harei ze lo yachzir ad sheiten ot o ad shechave mishkelotav. He says, when a person comes and he finds, whether we're talking about kli chesef or nechoshet, silver or copper, or any type of oferet, right? Pieces of oferet, of plum, how do you say, lead. V'chol kli matechot, or any type of matechet, of metals. You're not going to give it back until the guy gives a siman, or until he's going to tell you the weight. So it comes out, mishkal avisiman, midau minyan, nami avisiman. Just like he comes and he says the mishkal is going to be a siman, meaning the weight is going to be a siman. So to the midah minyan, which means the length, the measurements, right, and the numbers are also going to be a siman. So therefore, that's how we're finishing off, that it is going to be considered a minyan, whether it's going to be the weight, the measurement, or numbers.
Right,
Says the Gemara, v'chatichot shel basar, we're talking about now pieces of meat that they belong to you. Ask the Gemara, my why? They have a mishkal siman, the mishkal is a siman. Right, again, as we already said before, if we already proved that the weight is considered a siman, so to you have a siman. Answers the Gemara, mishkal dashavi, no, the weight is equal. Okay, so says the Gemara, v'tavi chaticha gufa siman, the piece in itself is going to be a siman. Or the dafka, because it comes from the tzavar, or the amta from the yerech, means it comes from the neck, or it comes from different parts of the, like in Hebrew, in Israel, it's like numbers, right? Mispar shmone, mispar this, but meaning it goes for certain parts. Milo Tanya, didn't we learn? Matzah chatichot dagim v'dag nashuch, right? Chayav la'achriz, you're obligated to mention it. Chaviyot sheyam v'chaviyot shel shemen v'tvuah, gargarot shel zetim arelu shelo, they do belong to you. So answers the Gemara, what are we dealing with? Pediika simana bepaska, we have the siman in the way that it's cut. Because he used to cut it, right, like in 3 different parts. And that's what it means. That it's the way that it was cut, and that's exactly how they're going to have this cut. So Amar Mor says, Chaviyot shel yain v'shel shemen. Yeah, we're talking about now Chaviyot of yain v'shel shemen. Yeah, and he comes and it says like this. V'shel tvua v'shel gruro v'shel zetim are elu shelo. It belongs to him. Yeah, so he comes and he says like this. We're from the top. We're going after the 2 dots. We are 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. Okay. So it lines down. So it says one more time. So more says, Chaviyot shel yain, shemen, tvua, gruro v'shel zetim, harelu shelo. They belong to him. But now we learned in the Mishnah, kadei yain kadei shemen chayav la'achriz. You're obligated to come and you're obligated to be machriz on jugs of oil and of wine, right? So what's going on? Why does it say that if you found oil or wine, it belongs to you? Here it says that if you find it, you have to announce it. So answers the Gemara, Amar Bizera Amar Rav. Says Rabbi Zera in the name of Rav, right? We're right under that little tiny hay. Yeah, Amar Rabbi Zera Amar Rav, Matznitin Birashum. Our Mishnah is talking about where they put a little bit of teat, right, around the megufa, which means that around the cap they put like clay, and therefore it's called roshem, right? So therefore, since it's still a ker, which is satum, so therefore it's considered like a siman, because that's the derech of the balabatim that they sell the wine in that form. So therefore, since there's a siman, that's why he has to announce it, because there's still a siman to this jugs. Okay? Fine. Miklal. So it comes out. The Braita, that in the Braita is talking about bepatuach. They're talking about that it's open, meaning it's an open barrel, open jug. So if it's going to be patuach, So aveda midati. So then that's considered aveda midat. Which means if you just leave it completely meaning completely open, that's aveda midat. You got rid of it. Why? Because there's shkatzim and ratzim. They're going to come inside of it. Imagine right now I come in and leave a bottle open, right? You're basically inviting, right? And you're leaving it in the public. You're basically inviting bugs and everything else to just enjoy themselves. So that's called aveda midat. So Amar Rav Oshia comes and he says b'metzif. That means basically what happened was, no, you put it on top, but it was just on top without clay. Meaning it's like, you're putting like something on top of the bottle, but just like this. But you're not actually turning it around. You're not actually closing it, but you put it on top. So if our bugs cannot get in, right? But technically speaking, right, it's not closed with any type of siman. Okay, so that's one answer, right? Another answer. Abaye says, afilu tema. Even if you're going to tell me idi v'idi, the both cases are talking about reshum, right? That means there's going to be a siman, that there's going to be the clay around the top. Lakasha, still not a question. Kan, here we're talking about kodem sheniftechu otzarot, before the otzarot were actually opened up, which means it's not the time that they start selling the wines, and therefore when you found it with the siman, right, they only do it for a few people, so therefore you know whose it is. But here they open it up to everybody, meaning that there's always going to be like an early access and then regular. So the early access, since not everybody has it, so therefore that's why we said that it's going to be a siman. But if it's a time that everybody has wine now, so everyone's getting wine and you still think that you're going to have a siman, there's no siman, there's nothing there. Ki had Rav Yaakov bar Abba, just like Rav Yaakov bar Abba, Ashka Chavita de Chamra, he found a chavit of wine, la'achar sheniftechu otzarot, after the otzarot were open. Ata lekamed Abaye, he came in front of Abaye Elmaleh, and he told him, Zil shekol lenafshach, go take, right, for yourself. Which means that once the otzarot were opened up, so now you're allowed to take it for yourself. Why? Because even if they do have this clay on the sides, since now everybody has these things, so if it's not considered a siman anymore, and therefore what? And therefore, right, there's no problem. Okay, you could keep it for yourself. Finders, keepers, losers, weepers. Fine. Next Gemara. Ba mine Rav Bevai Rav Nachman. Ask Rav Bevai from Rav Nachman. Makom havi siman or lo havi siman? Is makom considered a siman or not? So until now, when do we ever see this concept of makom being a siman? According to Shitat Rava. Chazak Baruch. You're on the ball. Yeah? So Elmaleh, he comes and he tells him, Tinitua. But we already learned it. Yeah? What does that mean? We already learned it. Yeah? He says, Matzah chaviyot shel yain v'shel shemesh shel tvoah v'grov v'shel zdim. Haridu shelo belongs to you. Now, Isa, if you're going to tell me that the makom is considered a siman, lachruz makom. Why don't you just announce the place? Announce the place v'gamarnu. Ella, obviously, right? It's considered it's not considered a siman. So Amar Razvid said that's not a proof from the Mishnah. He says why? What are we dealing with? Besfat anar, which means that it's on by the river banks, and therefore, right? Therefore, he comes and he says like this. So there's a lot of wine that comes from the sfinot. So whenever they come, they go to get from the sfinot that's on the Sfat anar. So sometimes they just forget their barrels there. Now, if they forgot it, right, b'makom acher, in another place, really be'emet, it is a siman, meaning where it is, everybody's selling it there. So therefore, that's not called a siman. You're going to say, who lost a place? Where's the place? By the riverbanks. There's always by the riverbank. That's not a proof. When we talk about a siman is that you come and you say, it's going to be this location. That's not normal that everyone has it. You understand? So that's considered a siman. So Amar of Mari, my time Amru Rabbanam, why do the rabbis come and they say, Rakta denara lo avi siman? That by Sfat Anar, by the riverbanks, it's not called a siman. But they could say, just like it happened to you, that you forgot it there, it happened to your friends. Meaning everybody forgot, meaning that's the place where everyone's buying the wine and all these things. So therefore, many times it actually happens that what? That it's, how do you call that? It's not a proof that it's yours. Another girsa, ikadamri. Amar of Mari says, my time Amar Banam, why did the rabbi say makom is not considered a siman? They could tell him, right, I makom, the same place. Okay, so the ikadamri was the exact like of the opposite. Okay, that means they basically just say that why is it not a siman because of this. Okay, because we tell them this. So that means this ikadamri was not going on the rekta denara; it was going on makom. Okay, the first one was what was the reason that the rabbis don't hold of rekta denara as a siman, and we answer just like it happened to you, it happened to your friend. Now we're saying, why does the rabbis not hold of makom as a siman, just like it happened to you, it happened to your friend in the exact same place? Okay, story. Au gavra, te ashkach kufra ki ma'asarta. A person found zefet. Zefet is kufra, right, which is a tar, in bevet agitot, in a place where they come and they crush the wine, right, the grapes. Atalekmed Rav, they came in front of Rav, okay, to ask what's the deen of this zefet. Elmaleh, he says it, take it for yourself. Shkol lemshach, take it for yourself. Chaz yadav kamechasem. So Rav saw that he was actually meases, and like ki'ilu amarle zil plogle lechia bar berim mineh. So basically, what happened was that when Rav saw that the guy was like, the rabbi just told me I could keep it, but you know what? I feel a little bit. Am I really going to keep it? So what did he tell him? He went and he told him, you know what? Go divide a bit with my son Chia. What does that mean? The rabbi was trying to show him that I'm not afraid of the halakha. There's no problem. I'm not afraid of it. The proof, divide it with my son. Go give it to my son. He's going to take it without any problem, right? Usually people say, you know what? Maybe he's just saying it for. No. Go take it for my son. Yeah, there's no problem with that. Okay? So, Lema Kasavar Rav. So why don't we just say, Makom lo avi siman? Are you going to tell me that Rav just holds that Makom is not going to be a siman, and then that's it? Right? Why don't you bring a proof that Rav holds that the Makom is not a siman? He left it by the wine press. Doesn't matter, it's not a siman. So Rabbi Abba says, no, Mishum Yush Baalim Naguba. They were talking about Yush Baalim. Techaza de Kadche Be'echilfe. That they saw that there was even asabim coming by it, which means that he understood that this zefet was there for a long time. And since it was there for a long time, there was probably for sure yush in the fact that it was left for such a long time, and therefore that's why he said that. Then he says nothing to do with the makom or not the makom, it has to do with was there yush or not, and the fact that there was yush, so that's why he said that's it. You could keep it, no problem. Okay, fine. 2 dots. Yeah, on the bottom of the page. Kav Gimel Mubet, 2 dots. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar comes and he says, any type of a utensil, kol kli ampuria, you're not obligated to come and to mention them. What is ampuria? Says Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel says, right? Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, kelim hadashim. Yeah, he says they are new. Yeah, new utensils. Shelo sevatan ha'ain, which the owner still didn't even have, right, benefit from it in order to recognize them. Meaning like this: you just bought a utensil. Since it's new, if you don't have enough time seeing it, you cannot recognize it with a tuvain. That's why they say en por re'aya, right? En porya, ampuria, right? There's en por re'aya, meaning that there's no raya, there's no proof, or no also re'ya. You can't see it, meaning that they didn't have it enough in order to start recognizing, right, the utensil. So says the Gemara, yeah, that's Rashi says that, yeah. Says the Gemara, right? Hechidami, what's the case? Eat bu siman if they have a siman. So what do I care? What do I care? Which one? If there's no meaning, if there's a siman, I don't care if he didn't see it for a long time. But there's a siman. V'diler bu siman, and if there's no siman, so so even if he does have a long enough tviyotayin, what does that help? Imagine right now you lost something. Now there's no siman. What do I care that you had it for 10 years or 20 years and you know that there's no siman? Sorry. If there's no siman, no siman. So what's the case? So answers the Gemara, really be'emet, telepehu siman, you don't have a siman. Nafkamina, what is a nafkamina? You remember that we said for a rabbi, you do give things back with tviyut ayin. Tviyut ayin means that they can recognize it with their eyes. And therefore he comes and he says, Sviatan ha'ayin, right? And therefore, if right now they were hurgilu, kimlu begavayu, so therefore they know it well, and then we give it back to them. Kilos vatanan, but if they didn't have love for a long time, lo kimlu begavayu, v'lo madilinu, so we don't give it back to the tzur ben rabbanan. But again, it's only for the tzur ben rabbanan that we come and we give it back with tviyut ayin. Okay, the Amar of Yunamar, Shmuel says of the name of Shmuel, behani tlap mile, and these 3 things, avdi rabbanan meshalem b'melayu. The rabbis are allowed to come and change their words. Very fitting for Purim. Remember, this is tomorrow's daf. We're right by Purim. 3 things that the rabbis are allowed to change their words. We spoke about this also on Monday night in the Shalom Bayit Shiur to do with the concept of changing your words. Are you allowed to change your words? So there are 3 things that the rabbis are allowed to change their words in. Number one, right? B'Masechet, meaning if somebody asks you, okay, here there's actually going to be a machloket, right, between, right, between, okay, there's going to be, we're going to see now, machloket Rashi Tosfot on the majority of these things. Okay, so basically like this. One of them is Masechet. What does it mean Masechet? Rashi says it's Midat Anava, which means that they're going to come and they're going to ask you, do you know Masechet Horoyot? So you can say no. You do know it. But you're just saying it because of Anava. So therefore you're saying no, I don't know it. So therefore you're changing your words. You're obviously lying. But you're allowed to because of Anava. That is Shitat Rashi. Okay? Now the question is only if he says, only if it's like Tosfot brings down, that it's only if Be'emet are coming to, like Ki'ilu to test you if you know or not know. But if they're actually asking you a question from it, so then you have to always usually give the psak. Don't just start, pretending you're an anav if you have to pass it. Okay? The next one, right, is Puraya. So this Puraya is actually going to be a machloket Rashi and Tosafot. Yeah, Puraya here it says that if they're going to ask you if you had relations, right, or anything to do with, so you're allowed to say no. Why? Sniut. That's what Rashi says. And therefore, since it's sniut, you're allowed to come and you're allowed, right?
If you ask a rabbi, he's allowed to say no, right?
Which one?
The question is asked to a rabbi.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So the next one was Puraya, which is going to be the bed. Because Puraya is a bed, right? Which means that did you actually have relations? You're allowed to answer no. Tosafot argues and he says no. The pshat is that did you sleep in this bed because there was keri found on the bed? So therefore it's ki'ilu that like they're gonna start saying that he fell asleep and he had this he was about keri. Even though I don't remember now who it is. I don't know if it's Marsha. Somebody actually mentions it's to do with Purim, because Puraya, right? Puraya is also Purim, and there it's talking about that that you're allowed to lie to show ki'ilu that you're drunk, and really you're not drunk. Meaning a rabbi is allowed to show ki'ilu he's drunk, pretend that he's drunk, right? Even though he's not drunk. Yeah, so that's what he's allowed to do in the Puraya. The third one is Ushpiza. What is Ushpiza? If you went to somebody's house and they accepted you as a guest. So therefore, somebody comes and he says, by the way, these people, did they accept you incredibly? You're going to say, no. Now the question is why? So the reason why is because if you're going to say that these guys were incredible, they gave me 3 meals a day, and they gave me this, and they gave me that, what's going to happen? All of a sudden what's going to happen is everyone's going to jump on them. And everyone's going to come to them. So therefore, you're allowed to lie in order that, did they accept you? Yeah, no. You understand? Why? In order that... Yeah, nothing special. Why? In order that... So says the Gemara, my nafkamina. What is the nafkamina of this halakha that comes out from Shemuel? Right? He says, in order to give them back, an aveda with viyutayim. If you know that he only changes his words in these 3 things, we give it back. But if he comes and starts, lying or doing other things, right? So then what happens? So then, what's it called? We don't give it back. Okay, why? Because that means he also by Aveda, he might start also fooling around. You understand? And that's why the Gemara says, Morzutra Chasida, Igniv lekasa de kaspa meushpiza. It was stolen from him a kos of kesef, right? So we're talking about from his, so he went and he nignav kos shel kesef from his, per Chazil Yehu barberav. So he found a barberav, Demashi yadeh venagiv beglima de chavreh. That he came and he was wiping his hands on the clothing of his friend. Amar Morzutra said, Hainu hai, this is a ganav. De lo echpat le'amomonat de chavreh, kafte ve'ode. They tied him up and he admitted to it. What does that mean? So imagine, right? There's a thief. Doesn't matter where it is, what it is. There's a thief. All of a sudden you went and you saw that they went and they used their friend's clothing without permission. He's a ganav. That's it. That's all you needed. He's a ganav. And he actually admitted to it. Yeah, incredible, right? The entire concept of... right, exactly. Meaning that if you could do these things, that means obviously that... yeah, 100%. Okay, have a wonderful...